All right, so today we're gonna do Kim Kardashian, see if her facial analysis. And before I start, I will have my email and my IG down in the description. If you want to get your face rated, make sure to DM me, and I will do a face rating for you, give you the instructions, and from there you'll get and receive your face rating within 24 or 48 hours, depending on how busy I am. And I'll do it all for free. So yeah. So let's see what Kim Kardashian's facial score is. So her overall rating is a 7. How rare is that? That's 1 in 92 people. The percentage of people is a top 1%. Side facial score is an 88%. Front facial score is a 48%. Her total facial harmony score is a 64%. Her facial dimorphism, so how feminized is her face, is a 6.5. Her body fat factors is an 8.5, and her miscellaneous features is a 7. The tier list: tier 1 is ideal, tier 2 near ideal, tier 3 normal, tier 4 is slight flaw, tier 5 a flaw, tier 6 a huge flaw, and tier 7 breaks harmony. Alright, so this is going to be her overall facial assessment breakdown. So the major flaws that I have noticed personally in her face. So it's going to go from the front to the side view as well. So in the front view profile, Kim's filtrum extends overly far. The filtrum deviates multiple measurements outside for what may be considered attractive. If the filtrum was much more shorter in length, the midface will be much more compact, and with that, the lower third proportions in relation to the height of the chin will harmonize perfectly. So I'm gonna explain what I mean when I get there, but yeah. So this is the side view profile right here. So the lower lip protrudes ever so slightly past her upper lip, and this is unideal for all the lip measurements in the side view profile. So her lower lip protrudes a little bit more than her upper lip, and that is going to mess up her lip measurements from the side view profile. Now, this is the rarity scores of other celebrities, so you can compare. All right, let's start off with the eye separation ratio. So it goes from the distance between the pupils versus the distance between her cheekbones, and it is at 47.6%, and that is a wide set. So her pupils are pretty much wide set relative to her cheekbones, but it's still within the ideal range, so that's perfect for a female. Facial thirds is at a tier 1, so she does have good thirds. It doesn't deviate too far from 33%, and it should not deviate more than 3% away from 33%, which all the thirds do not, so that is perfect. Her canthal tilt is a little bit too tilted, and this is going to look uncanny and alien-like at 13.5. So I don't know if she has surgery or anything like that, but this is too extreme. Or yeah, this is way too extreme at this point. So it's so positive that it's going to be a negative in terms of how am I going to rate this. So some people might look at it as a positive, but most people are going to look at it as a negative, even though it's too positively tilted. So yeah. Her facial width to height ratio FWHR is a tier 5 at 1.74, so she does not have a very compact mid face at all. Her face length is a little bit too long because of her long filtrum, like I said before, and that's why this is unideal. Her jaw frontal angle, so she does have a very thin jaw at 81 degrees, and women tend to have more flatter jaws because they have more smaller heads in general. So the fact that her jaw is that skinny is going to be not a flaw, but it's still within the normal range, but it's not ideal at all. Her cheekbone high settiness, so she relatively has pretty high set cheekbones, is medium to high set. This would be considered medium to high set. If it was above 81%, then that would be considered high set. But since this is 79%, this is very close to the ideal, but this is still not a flaw by any means necessary. It's really, really close to the ideal, so this is perfect. Her bigonial width is a tier 3, so how wide is her jaw? And her jaw is at 80% of her cheekbones, so she doesn't really have wide cheekbones relative to her face, but her jaw needs to be a little bit more wider. What this will do is this will give you the light bulb effect. So if your jaw is if your jaw is narrow and your jaw is not wide enough, but your forehead is wide, it will give you a light bulb effect because the bottom of the head is very skinny and the top of the head is very wide, so it gives you that light bulb effect. And that's exactly what's going on with this right here, but this is still within the normal range. Her total facial height width ratio, so how long is her face relative to the width of it, and it's 1.46. So this would probably be in the normal range for a man, but for a female, this is a little bit too long, and this is gonna break harmony. Her chin to philtrum ratio is a tier 4 at 1.73, and like I said again, she does have a very, very long philtrum for her chin, and a philtrum like this is gonna make your whole face just that much longer, and this does not harmonize well at all, so this will be a slight flaw. Her neck width is at 89%, so this will be ideal for a man again, but for a female, 89% is a little bit too much. You do want to have a little bit more skin in your jaw, but I think it's because the width of her jaw is already narrow itself, so that's probably why her neck width is probably that much wider. So it just gives it that effect that it's much wider. Her mouth to nose width ratio is at 1.5. So your nostrils, so the width of your nose is supposed to be within the inner eye creases, and then the width of the mouth is supposed to be around the iris, which for her, since her eyes are wider set, is not going to be touching the iris because her eyes are a little bit wider set relative to her face. But still, this is perfect. So she does have a very pretty skinny nose relative to her face, so that's probably why it's within the ideal range. Her mid-face ratio, so like I said again, her face is stretched out, and another thing on top of this, like I said again, her eyes are very wide set. So with this mid-face ratio, exactly, it's supposed to be 1-to-1, around 1-to-1. So it goes from the eye line all the way down to the top of the lip, of the upper lip, and that is going to be divided by the pupil distance, the distance between the pupils, and that's how you measure the mid-face ratio. And her actual, just her mid-face is just a little bit too long. It's the philtrum and it's the nose. I think that's what it is. The philtrum and the nose, it just makes her face just that much longer. So that's going to be a slight flaw. Her eyebrow steadiness, so how low set is her eyes, at 87%, and this is ideal for a female. You want your eyebrows to be low to mid, not too low, but not too high. And that's exactly what she has. Her eye spacing is 1 width eyes apart, or close to it at 94. If it was at 95, I would give her a tier 1 for it, but this is not a flaw essentially, so this is pretty good. Her eye aspect ratio is a tier 1 at 2.6, and 2.6 is within the ideal range for a female, so this is perfect. Her lower lip to upper lip ratio is a tier 1 at 1.44, so her upper lip is lower than her lower lip, and that is perfect. And that is at the lower end of it, but it's still that is, nevertheless, that's good. Her deviation from her ipsilateral angle to her jaw frontal angle, so this is the angle created from the midface, so it goes from the nasion all the way up to the edges of the eyes relative to the jaw frontal angle. And if you subtract these two angles, it shouldn't deviate more than 5%, and if it deviates more than 15%, that is a complete flaw. And for her, it does not deviate more than 5%, so that is a tier 1. Her eyebrow tilt is at 17 degrees, so that's perfectly fine for a female, and that is striking as well. It gives her a more striking appearance. Her bitemporal width is a tier 2, so like I said again, she does have a very wide forehead, and it's at 98%, and like I said again before, light bulb effect, and you do not want to have a light bulb effect for, I don't care if you're a male or a female, light bulb effect is not good. So too wide of a forehead can be unharmonizing and not a good look. So lower third proportion, so you want your lower third to be balanced, so it measures the upper portion of your lower third divided by the bottom portion, and hers is at 37%, so you don't want to deviate more than 3% away from 33, which hers deviate 4%, so that is going to be a slight, well, it's not going to be a flaw by any means necessary, but that's going to be close to the ideal. But still, it's really not technically a flaw, but preferably you do want to be within that 3% of the 33. Her ipsilateral angle is a tier 2 at 84%, and this is actually near the ideal for a female, but females tend to have wider set eyes than men, so if she was a man, this would be perfect, but since she's not, this is not going to be within the ideal, because since they tend to have wider set eyes, it's going to start at 86 degrees instead of 84, So that, but still, nevertheless, this is going to be near the ideal. So it is essentially not a flaw by any means necessary. Her gonial angle is a tier 1 at 126 degrees. And for a man, I think the ideal is between 112 to 123. And then for females, it's a little bit shifted up, I think to 127 or 8. I can't remember. But still, this is perfectly fine. So her gonial angle is still on the wider side, but this is perfectly fine for a female, and it has enough edge to it, or yeah, enough sharpness to it. So you want that angle to be a little bit more tight. Her nasofrontal angle is a tier 1 at 136. So like the the gonial angle, this angle is literally like the outside of the range of the idealness. So anything more than 136 or past 137 relative to it is going to be outside of the ideal range. But still, this is very feminizing. For a female, you do not want to have a very protrusive brow ridge. That's going to look kind of too masculinizing. So for a female, this is perfect. Her mandibular plane angle, so how downswung is her jaw, and is at 21 degrees. And again, this is at the edge of the ideal range, so she's getting a lot of the ideals, but at the very edge. She's not getting it at the center of it. So this is about 15 to 22 degrees for men and for females, and for her, she got 21. So her jaw is not too downswung by any means necessary, and this is perfect. Her ramus to mandible ratio, so you do want your ramus to not be too long or not be too short. If it's too long, I think it's called, I can't remember the name, or macromegaly or something like that. If her ramus is way too long, her ramus is at the upper echelon at 70%, but still is not too long. So it's within the middle of the distribution, and this is perfect. So she does have a very adequate ramus for her mandible, and she does have a lot of jaw body, as you can see right here. Her facial convexity from the glabella is 170, and this is perfect. So her face is not too flat or not too rounded, and this is going to be pleasant in the side view profile. Her submental cervical angle, so she does not have a lot of submental fat underneath the chin, and this is at 110 degrees, and this is perfect. Her nasofrontal angle is a tier 1, so this assesses the relationship between the nose and the chin, and this does not take into account her facial convexity as well, so it just gets only the nose and the chin and nothing else. And 35 degrees is perfect, so it does have a good relationship. Her nasolabial angle, so how upturned is her nose, and is at a tier 2 at 93 degrees. Women tend to have more upturned noses, and this wouldn't be ideal even if it was for a man as well, because man has less upturned noses, but for her nose isn't as upturned as it needs to be. And it's also, you can also tell that her nose isn't upturned from the front view profile. Her orbital vector is a tier 1, and she does have a very positive orbital vector. So the orbital vector is the bone underneath the eye. You want that bone to protrude underneath the eye, so you won't have any dark circles or eye bags from the front view, and from the side view it just looks more pleasant. Her total facial convexity is a tier 1, so the difference between the total facial convexity from the glabella and this one is that this one takes into account her nasal protrusion, and this is perfect at 101 degrees, and this is within the middle of the distribution of the ideal range, so this is perfect. Her mental labial angle, so this is the indent created by the chin and the bottom lip, and hers is at 122, and this is a tier 1, so this is perfect. And she does have a lot of chin protrusion, which is perfect for a female. Females tend to have more chin protrusion than men on average. Her facial convexity from the nasion is 166 degrees, and instead of getting it from the glabella, this one is getting it from the nasion, and is going to be shifted down 5 degrees less than from the glabella. And hers is at 166% or degrees, and that is a tier 1, so that her nasal projection is a tier 1 at 58%, and 58% is within the low range, but for females, they tend to not have very protrusive noses than men, and this is perfect, so 58%. And this is relative to the length of the nasal bridge. So is the width right here divided by the length of the nasal bridge, and 58% is good. So she has adequate nasal protrusion. Now this is nasal width to height projection. Let me explain this right here. So this is the width of the nose divided by the length of the actual nose itself. So it goes from the eye line down to the actual width of the nose, or the base of the nose. And hers is at 77%. So she does have good nasal length. So it's the length that we're looking for in this measurement right here. And it is within the middle of the distribution for the ideal range. Her rictus E line goes from the nasal tip down to the chin, and you want your bottom lip to barely be behind that line, and then you want your upper lip to be twice the distance from the line. And that's kind of like what I see right here, but her bottom lip is a little bit too close, so I had to give that a tier 2. Her H line goes from the tip of the upper lip down to the chin, and her bottom lip passes that line, so I had to give her a tier 3. This is kind of subjective in a way, these lines that y'all see right here, these lip measurements. So it's not something that is like it's a particular angle that you're looking for. So it's kind of subjective a little bit, but if it's ideal, you would definitely know. Her S line goes from the middle of her nose down to the chin, and you want your bottom lip and your upper lip to touch, and her bottom lip actually passes the line. Now in this picture it doesn't show it, but in the other picture it does, but her bottom lip actually passes the line. So this would be unideal. Like I said before, her bottom lip is more protrusive than her upper lip, like as you can see right here, but it's ever so slightly. And this one is very, very close. It's a tier 2. The bursal line goes from the subnasal down to the chin, and her bottom lip and her upper lip are actually the same size. It might look like it's not, but it's actually the same distance. And you want your upper lip to be a little bit more than your bottom lip. So her nasal mental angle is a tier 1 at 127 degrees. And this assesses this is another measurement that assesses the nose to chin relationship, but it also takes in your facial convexity as well. And her facial convexity, like I said before, was perfect. Actually, all of the facial convexities were perfect, so I know this one is going to be perfect as well, and is within the middle of the distribution. Her gonian to mouth relationship, so this measures if you have an adequate jaw for your face, and by how it determines that is by your gonian, so this bone right here, being undercut the lip line. So if your gonian bone undercuts the lip line, that means you got an adequate size ramus or jaw for your face. And as you can see, she does have that. Her recession relative to the Frankfurt plane angle, so this measures if you have any jaw recession. Now this is extremely close for Kim, and it literally lines up at her nasion. You want it to be at least past the nasion and past the glabella preferably, but hers lines up, so she does not have any jaw recession, but this is very, very close. So she was extremely close to being recessed. Her browish inclination angle is a tier 1, so is at 11 degrees. And this is within the lower range for a female, but still this is ideal nevertheless. And she does have a good enough browish inclination. And this line right here is perpendicular to the Frankfurt plane angle. So this is the Frankfurt plane angle, and this line is perpendicular to it. And the last measurement is the nasal tip. Now women tend to have more of a higher nasal tip because their nose is more upturned in general. And for hers is 126 degrees, and this is a tier 1. And 126 degrees is at the higher end. She does look like she has a very upturned nasal tip. Now the nose might not look upturned, but the nasal tip does look very upturned. But this is ideal. So like I said before, if you want me to rate your face, I will have my email down in the description.